All right, we have a new entry in the Trump 2024 reality show. Former President Trump delivered a preview of what to expect in next year's presidential election in his address to the annual Conservative Political Action Conference on Saturday, framing the contest as an existential battle for the future of the country. We have no choice. If we don't do this, our country will be lost forever, Trump told a crowd of diehard supporters at the conference in National Harbor, Maryland. People are tired of rhinos and globalists. They want to see America first. This is the final battle, he continued. They know it, I know it, you know it, everyone knows it. This is it. Either they win or we win, and if they win, we no longer have a country. Jesus. The former president went on to position himself as a warrior in the battle for retribution in Washington. In 2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today, I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution, Trump exclaimed to the crowd. Throughout the more than 100-minute-long address, the former president touched on familiar grievances, continuing to lament his loss in 2020 presidential election and hitting the Republican establishment in Washington. We are never going back to the party of Paul Ryan, Karl Rove, and Jeb Bush, Trump said. He also continued his feud with Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, referring to him directly after criticizing China-loving politicians. You listen to this, Mitch McConnell? You listening to this? Trump said, echoing his earlier racist attacks against Elaine Chao, McConnell's wife and Trump's former transportation secretary. While the former president wasted no time targeting adversaries like Ryan McConnell and Senator Mitt Romney, missing from the speech were any digs at potential 2024 challengers like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. His speech often took on the air of a campaign rally as attendees broke into frequent chants of 4 more years and USA, USA, while CPAC crowds was at its most energized while the former president was speaking. Not even Trump could ultimately attract a full room of attendees, as a wide section in the back of the ballroom remained empty. Nonetheless, this year's CPAC underscored his enduring popularity of the former president among the GOP grassroots. Throughout the week, guests and speakers alike made explicit their support for his 2024 candidacy with colorful Trump-inspired attire, and at times more subtly in their lack of enthusiasm for the other announced or presumptive White House candidates in attendance, like former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and former U.S. Ambassador to UN Nikki Haley. Trump also dominated the event's annual straw poll, winning 62% of the vote. DeSantis came in a distant second place with 20% support. Every other figure included in the straw poll came in with single-digit support or less than 1% support. While CPAC demonstrated that Trump can still excite some of the party's activist base as well as the party donors, and while national polls show the former president still polling formidably, the conference comes ahead of what's expected to be a messy GOP primary battle. Pompeo used the Trump-friendly CPAC to take a swipe at the former president for adding nearly $8 trillion to the national debt. Haley, during her speech, said, if you're tired of losing, then put your trust in the new generation. If you want to win, not just as a party, but as a country, then stand with me. A subtle jab at the former president, who is 76 while Haley is 51. This week's CPAC also came against the backdrop of a rival GOP event, the Club for Growth's annual donor dinner, where many of the announced or widely presumed White House candidates spoke, except for Trump. While Trump did not use the CPAC address to directly attack his potential 2024 rivals, he was quick to note his lead in the many polls of the hypothetical primary field. We're leading every Republican by massive numbers, Trump told the raucous audience. So, there's a little bit to unpack here. I had said before that I didn't think Trump was going to win the primary, but I mean, when I see a 62% victory in a straw poll, it is kind of hard to entirely bet against him. And also, I should say, I know that the CPAC straw poll is not indicative of like every single voter. It's this small sample of people. But there's something to be said when he's getting like 40% higher than the second place person of DeSantis, who scored with less support this year than last year. And then everyone else, including Haley, who's been running now for almost a month, wasn't even able to crack 2 digits, which already means if we were to say, hey, like she was at 9%, which I don't even think it was that high, that means that Trump, and that at least at CPAC, had 5 times more support than her at least. I mean, that's, God, it really is the Trump party. Now, where he says, we have no choice. If we don't do this, our country will be lost forever. And then we get to the point where he says, this is the final battle, which I hope that people understand the way U.S. politics works, especially when you're talking about presidential politics, is that after about 4 to at maximum 12 years, the White House shifts back support to the other person. So, for example, if the Democrats lose, or excuse me, if they win in 2024, they're probably going to lose in either 2028 or 2032. There's a historical trend where pretty much after a couple of years, a solid decade or less, just the general public gets sick of one party and then puts the other one in power. Um, it used to be every 8 years it would flip. The 2020 election kind of broke that trend a little bit. But that's why when he says this is the final battle, I don't really know what he's talking about, because Republicans are still going to have majorities in terms of their governorships, and they're going to probably they retook the House just this last cycle. They're probably going to get the Senate back in the next 2 or 3 cycles. So the only way I could say this, the only person I could really say this is the final battle for, is probably Trump himself, because I don't think if he loses in 2024, I don't think he's going to run in 28, for example. I think he'll finally just say, all right, I was president for 4 years. I got better than most people that try for that job. So whatever, other people can do this. And really, just I guess what I'm kind of disturbed by is the inflamed rhetoric of our country will be lost forever. It's like, I mean, that would, I don't know what that's even based on. He put 3 Supreme Court justices on the court that are right wing, and that majority is going to stick for at least 30 something years, if not even longer, because of how young they are. So I don't see where any time in the near future Democrats are suddenly going to have all this power and just transform the U.S. into their, like whatever he thinks they're going to do. That's why I said when they talk in these vague terms that don't really explain stuff, it starts to make me kind of confused, because they're not really telling you what is being lost here, what's at stake. He's like, oh, we will no longer have a country. Remember, it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican representative, that said she wanted a national divorce of blue and red states. So if anyone doesn't want a country, I would say there are some Republicans that don't want that. I haven't seen any Democrats who are like, yeah, let's take Florida and make it a different country with the rest of the South. Just that's why I said it's just this weird nebulous rhetoric that a lot of his supporters chew up. He says, we are never going back to the party of Paul Ryan, Karl Rove, and Jeb Bush. Well, really, I would say the only thing, and actually they are the party of Karl Rove, because they brought in another person from Bush's administration, Bolton, into Trump's. So they're on foreign policy, they're pretty identical to each other. But the only reason someone like Jeb Bush wasn't kissing Trump's backside like Paul Ryan did after, after Trump won the presidency the first time, or rather for the only time in 2016, is because he was out of office. And unfortunately, you're going to get more and more Paul Ryans, these careerist politicians that, they wag their finger, right, currently at Trump, but if they're in office, they go along with everything he does. I mean, you had a story where Paul Ryan said that Trump was a proven loser. He wasn't going to win this election cycle. He had lost the party all these other cycles. And that the only reason he's speaking so candidly against Trump is because he's no longer an active politician. If he was, he would be just right along for the Trump train like everybody else. He'd have his little red hat on. And I like that the article does mention the fact that the other candidates were kind of like poo-pooed, where it says that like Haley, I think there was a video I saw where she was like walking around taking pictures of people and they were screaming, Trump, 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 Trump. Yeah, CPAC is really an interesting event, because for as much as I've said this before about how I didn't think Trump was going to win the primary this time around, I am not going to pretend or not acknowledge facts that do not benefit my position or what I thought was going to happen. So when there's new evidence of something, I'm more likely to say, okay, I was wrong about this. So um, I think, and I said this before, if DeSantis gets in this race and attacks Trump over it again, like we can debate what's the best stuff to go after more, but if he goes into him in policy based ways, mentions that he lost this election, we can't we're because even Haley is doing this, right, where they're pulling this thing of like, you lost, you're a loser, you can't win. If they go hard on that and they're like, hey, you know what, we need to expand this program that he had that I like, but he's not the guy to do it because he's very much not someone who could get anything passed. He only passed one bill, that tax cut. That's the kind of stuff that I think would do better as far as like, because running as Trump light and like being so afraid of saying anything directly to or about him is not going to pan out for Haley or DeSantis or Pompeo or Pence or any of these other people that are in or may get in. You have to be very direct and acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is the former president that is still supported by a very large portion of the people that are part of the Republican Party, which is, I call it the Trump Party. And you have to just take a stand. You can't you have to outright oppose him or you're going to lose. Because for as much stuff as I say about Trump, he's someone who's not afraid of speaking out against anybody in his party, calling them whatever he wants, saying all types of stuff about them. And for some reason, the rest of the party is just afraid of this guy. And not for some reason, because I know why it is. They're afraid of getting, of losing support with his voters. But I can't respect people, even if I disagree with them, who can't take a stand. Because remember, they're not running to be dog catcher or, representative 1 out of 300 or senator 1 out of 100. They're trying to be the U.S. president. Like, how can you be commander in chief if you can't even command yourself to speak out against your primary opponent? So in a lot of ways, I'm glad that Trump got 60-some% of the vote, because I hope at least at CPAC anyway, this will serve as a wake-up call to the rest of that field that if you're not willing to go all in on attacking him and on making your case and just complete, just mask off, right? You don't, like, you have to just, and really that's the thing I always encourage people to do. If you're someone who wants to run for something, you'll be more respected by voters if you take a affirmative stance, even if they disagree with it, than you will if you're like, well, I like what some of President Trump did, but I have slight disagreements I'm not going to get into. If you really want to win, you have to pull the mask off, attack him on trying to cut Social Security, attack him on losing the election. And these people just don't seem willing to do that. And for that reason, Trump was able to get over 60% support at CPAC. And the exact next person can barely get into the 20s. So look, I'm someone who didn't want Trump to win this primary because I just don't want to run the risk of having him become president again, Grover Cleveland 2.0. But honestly, if these Republicans are showing they don't deserve to win, because they're just not willing to do the necessary attacks that are in place if you want to actually topple him. Because Trump is not this what is it, immune, there was a time where DeSantis was like going up, and then what happened? Trump attacked him, and then DeSantis backed off, and now he won't even say his name outside of his book that came out this week. So really, I just want this to be a wake-up call for them. And if any of them are serious about actually taking Trump out of this race, they have to coalesce around 1 or 2 people. So like I said, the only 2 that should be in are maybe Haley and DeSantis for the polling reasons, and then probably some other third person might be able to be something that, because again, we're a year away, so I don't want to just be 2 people right now, but it needs to be a small field of like 2, 3, 4 people, and at some point they have to coalesce around certain messages and just hammer him every day about, you lost the election, you tried to cut Social Security. Just if they went after him on those things, if they didn't win, they would come pretty damn close to winning. I'll put it that way. I think DeSantis could beat him, if he was stronger and actually, not a coward. But because he's worried about upsetting his voters, he won't do it. And he was in the strongest position to do it because he was polling better than anybody else. So really, Trump's CPAC appearance is just another reminder that this is the Trump party, and it's not the Trump party because everyone is so much a sycophant that they wouldn't vote for anyone else. It's the Trump party because every politician in the Trump party, besides Trump, is afraid of him and will never criticize him, even when they're competing against him for the same position. So if you want to see a true display of cowardice, watch the 2024 Republican primary. That's where you'll see all the fear and all the terror, and it won't be from the people who have to vote for these sick bastards. It'll be from the politicians who are too scared of a guy in a suit to actually mount a successful campaign